Welcome everyone. Happy Sunday. Hope everyone's doing well. Let me know if my audio is coming in clear and okay. Thanks for joining me for another Tesla Power Hour live stream, weekend edition. As you guys know, earnings week is coming up. Grab yourself a cup of coffee. Do whatever you need to do. Grab some juju if you want, if it's not too early where you're tuning in from. And we got a lot to talk about in this stream. Earnings preview. I want to share a little personal anecdote here to begin with. We got earnings preview though, EPS estimates, margin estimates, expectations, how the stock has been, and then CNBC and Yahoo Finance videos to cap it off. Yes, Lewis, that's okay. And by the way, let me know where you guys are tuning in from, city, state, country. Thank you. Appreciate that, guys. And I'll share some out. Mark, shout out to Mark, our awesome listener, and I think one and only probably. I don't want to assume, but I really think so. From Nunavut. Amazing. I love to hear these very, I've been to Yellowknife, so I kind of consider myself more of an Arctic guy, right? But none of it is on a different level. I hope you're doing well, Mark. Okay, I'll read out some city-state countries as they populate here in my chat. It's about a 3-second delay here. But I will start with a personal anecdote. So I'm at the coffee shop this morning, and I sit down. I grab my little, just a drip coffee, right? I sit down, and essentially I see, an antiquated piece of history on the table next to me. And by that, I mean the newspaper. And I look at the newspaper, I'm like, should I do it? I grabbed it. I start going through this thing, right? I'm like, it's probably good that I'm not on my phone all the time. Technology is killing me. It's killing everyone. Let's get off the screen. Let's go old school, right? You guys know I talk a lot of crap about newspapers sometimes. But man, it was kind of nostalgic, right? So I'm reading this thing and I'm going through it. And don't worry, there's a point to this. I'm going through this. I'm looking at the ads because you guys know I love looking at ads and studying them. I'm looking through the marketing. I'm looking through what stories. I'm trying to count. Really how many different news articles are negative, how many are positive. I'm having a hard time to figure that out. And I come across this. Okay, this is a paid advertisement in the province or the Vancouver Sun, whatever it was. I think it was the province this morning that I'm reading. It's driving into the future. Traffic's a mess. How do we fix it? What technologies can help unclog the current highways and help us design new highways that serve traffic better? It's presented by driving.ca, sponsored by none other than Toyota. I'm like, what? What is this? First of all, FSD is ringing through my mind, right? And I'm like, first of all, FSD is reading through my mind. And then second, I look at Toyota. I'm like, what is happening? It doesn't make any sense. April 19th, if anyone wants to go, driving.ca//events. And look at me, I'm pitching it even almost now. But I have no idea what the context of this was. I have no idea who's making money from this. I have no idea what the point of this ad was. But I thought I'd share it with you guys here because maybe someone smarter than I can figure this out. Okay, let me read out some places here. Oh, wow, a lot. Hi from Portugal. How's it going, Marco, as well? Awesome mods. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Agora Hills, Richard, how's it going? Greetings to the nearly cleanly shaven Yashu from Agora Hill. Yes, a little bit of the, I don't know if you want to call it the 7 o'clock shadow now. Too late for coffee? Yes, I guess you must be in Europe, is my guess, or Asia. Guyana, look at that. Geneva, Illinois, Sweden. From, what is this? Tenerife. I'm going to have to Google that after. Southern Sweden, Atlanta, Amsterdam, Virginia Beach, Santa Fe, Germany, Sweden. How's it going, everyone? I love seeing familiar faces here. Mimi, by the way, Mimi and Richard, awesome seeing you on Farzad's stream last couple weeks here. It's been super cool to see the Juju gang give their opinions, and just like I know you guys almost, so it kind of it's a really cool feeling. Cedar Park, Texas. Hanif, how's it going? Germany here, awesome. We're hearing a second audio feed. I hope that's okay. I hope it's better now. Austria, how's it going, Michael? Abe from rainy Chicago, listening while waiting for my son's soccer to complete. Very nice. Shout out to you. Hope you're staying safe in Chicago. I'm seeing some headlines coming out of there, not looking real pretty there. New York, Montreal, Canada, St. Thomas, Ontario. Richard saying get to the point. Toyota. How about tunnels? Yeah, I mean tunnels, that's a good point actually. If Elon was here, you'd probably be saying tunnels. Guyana. Wow, that's the second Guyana today. Shout out to you guys. Switzerland, Philadelphia, Bangalore, Las Vegas. I'm gonna try to fly through these. Plymouth. I feel like Plymouth's not the way to say it. Plymouth is probably the American way to say it. Sweden, Yes. Well, immediately I was like, well, you guys should check out the Las Vegas boring tunnel. And I was like, wait, hold on one second. When are we going to get FSD beta driverless in Las Vegas? Because I feel like that should happen already. Mountains of Tennessee. Toyota is wishful advertising. Look, Toyota spends a lot of money, and I have to admit, I have to make a. I'm gonna look stupid making this admission, okay? But yesterday, no joke, you guys know I have that video, right? I'm not sort of making fun of the Toyota BZ4X, the worst name possible for a car. In case you don't know it, maybe I'll pull it up here. Remember, okay, look at this. They're running ads on Google. This Toyota car, right? All intents and purposes looks fine, but they made 1,000 of these suckers, right? And I made a video once. I said, if you ran into one of these, you should go buy a lottery ticket because you were the luckiest person probably on earth because these things barely exist. I have to make an admission. I ran into not one, not two, not three, 4 of these yesterday on the highway. I was going, as you guys know, I was going back and forth from Richmond because my our Model 3 top glass had a crack in it, which I can get into the story after if you guys are interested. And I'm going back and forth from Richmond 4 trips, right? Because I have to go there, come back, go back there, come back. So, and I run into 4 of these. No joke. I was flabbergasted. I feel like I should buy call options next week. Just unreal. Unreal. Plymouth. Okay, that's good. Copenhagen, Denmark. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday to you too. FSD in Seattle. Very nice. And by the way, I love Farzad's keeping the Power Hour dream alive at 12 p.m. Pacific on Fridays. I love it because he was earlier, but he used to be earlier, and I think now it's just going longer. But it's awesome that last hour also still has live content going on. Okay, so let's get into some news, shall we? If you guys haven't heard already, Wednesday is Tesla earnings day, and not only Tesla, I think, it's good to get context around who else is performing, who else is reporting earnings. Feels very performative, doesn't it? So we have a lot of earnings to go through. Notably, we have Netflix after hours on Tuesday, United. That is United, the airlines company, but also United Community Bank. First Horizon. Some other banks are reporting. Johnson & Johnson before hours. ASML, Morgan Stanley. Discover, of course, Tesla after hours on the Wednesday, IBM, American Express. Actually, hold on here. Let me move this. Thursday, we have American Express. So just not a gauntlet of tech companies, but still a good amount of earnings to talk about this week. What matters to us is probably Tesla earnings. And so Wednesday, we should probably just get a little preview in of what we're expecting for earnings heading into this week. First, let's get a little brief synopsis, if we can, just on the last 5 days as to how the stock has been. So for the last 5 days, Tesla's up 2.76%, so pretty much the last week. In comparison, Apple's pretty much up the same. Nvidia is pretty much flat-ish, and the Nasdaq is up with actually the Nasdaq is up higher than Apple and Tesla, which is interesting because Tesla has a beta of 2. And Apple is pretty much should be in line. So there was probably some tech stock that really outperformed last week. But the point is, it was kind of a average nothing burger. There was ups, there was downs, but it kind of flattened to pretty much a nothing burger-ish week. It feels like everyone is gearing up for this earnings that we have coming up. And we will go through some estimates of what analysts, Wall Street, Tesla bulls, Twitter Tesla bulls are predicting or projecting heading into Wednesday. It will be a big earnings. I'm just going to preface by saying, we say this every quarter. We say it's going to be big earnings. But the reason why I think this earnings is more substantial than previous earnings is not because it is the most recent earnings that we have coming up, but because it's the first earnings with the massive price cuts that happened in the first week of January, right? It's been a while now. It's been about 3 months, more than 3 months since we've had the massive price drop in the beginning of the year. So this quarter will really tell a story on gross margins, of course, XF credits, but also operating leverage and the ramp ups. If the ramp ups have been going well for Tesla, it will and should show this earnings. Again, my line in the sand, and perhaps for a lot of Tesla bulls, you're going to think I'm really setting the bar low. For a lot of Tesla haters, you're going to think I am I have wishful thinking, but 20% gross margin XF credits is where I'm eyeballing as kind of the line in the sand, if you want to call it. If it comes in below 20% gross margin XF credits, I think we're in a world. We're going to be in some turbulent times. Just because gross margin 20% with all the price cuts that we've seen, and then Tesla lowering prices again in Europe last week, just doesn't bode well for the margin. Now, of course, we can talk about long-term growth story, all that stuff, but I'm just talking short-term, the way the Wall Street is going to project this. But let's go through a Gary Black things. His adjusted EPS is about 95 cents. Wall Street is about 87 cents. Remember, what the street says, whisper number will be higher. So my guess is, and I haven't checked what the whisper number is. If anyone knows, leave me a comment. And watching the comments here, leave me a comment. But I think whisper number is probably closer to what Gary is at. So the whisper number is really the number you have to look at to see if it's going to be a positive stock reaction or a negative. Gary is also at automotive gross margin X regulatory credits at 20.7%. And Wall Street is notably higher. So this is what I'm saying. If Wall Street is higher, notably, let's say at 21.1%, and gross margin comes in closer to 20%, well, let's say a shade under 20%, we can talk about how the stock will react from it. And I see some comments here, some discussion in the chat about operating margin, right? Because what matters isn't really gross margin, it's operating. Of course, EBITDA, operating margin, whatever you want to look at. At the end of the day, that's what matters, right? But I think gross margin, the reason why it's really being looked at is because gross margin, of course, with COGS, is directly corollary to the ramp and how well that is going. Of course, when people talk about advertising, and we don't have to go into advertising, open that wormhole again this week, but people like to somehow, I'm not sure if it's just incompetence, like to say, oh, gross margins are going to drop if Tesla starts advertising. Remember, stuff like that falls on the operating expense line. It doesn't fall into COGS. So the reason why gross margin really matters, I think, this week is going to be because people are going to see how the ramping and the cost reductions in the cars are going. Of course, we know Tesla long-term is an operating margin story, or an operating leverage story, I should say. But of course, gross margins matter with how everything is going to go with the ramps. So total revenues, Gary Black is estimating 23.4 billion. 23.5 is where where Wall Street is at. Let's just pause even for a second on the revenues. Isn't it unreal talking about these types of revenues for Tesla per quarter now? It's very unreal to talk about, 25 billion, a cool 25 billion in the quarter for Tesla on revenues. Considering like Tesla, and I had this tweet out, I won't go back now if I just don't want to find it. Tesla's doing as many deliveries as it did, close to like 80% close to what it did in all of fiscal year 2020 in a quarter, right? It's just nuts. Or as Elon would say, nutty. Yeah, no kidding. Gary says, my adjusted EPS estimate is higher than the consensus for 3 reasons. He has higher energy profits at 2 cents per share, higher deferred revenue recognition at 2 cents per share, and lower taxes due to Inflation Reduction Act. Now, this is kind of the wild card, right? The Inflation Reduction Act and people questioning, okay, are we going to get the $7,500 tax credit or battery rebate, if you want to call it, for producing these batteries in Nevada and Texas, is in Fremont. Are these going to come to fruition at the bottom line? I guess we'll find out. This is going to be kind of the wild card situation, and I guess no one really knows, but we shall see. And I also noticed the first comment, someone saying, and I'm not sure who this person is, but he says, why do you do X credit as if it's going to stay and increase? I think what to note with the regulatory zero emission vehicle credits is that it's not central to Tesla's story and Tesla's economics. So the reason why we back out credits is because it's not like Tesla, and of course it's incompetence by other companies that Tesla is benefiting from, for sure, and I think that will continue. But it's not central to why Tesla is a good investment in and of itself, right? It's a cherry on top, but it's not central to the growth story or the tech story or the engineering story that Tesla is. That's why it's backed out often, right? Because it's an externality. It just happens. Tesla doesn't really have a say as to where it's going to go. Mark says, will it dip? I'm afraid so. Market will spoil every awesome numbers from Tesla. Well, let's get a little vibe check in the chat. Red, green, or flat the day after earnings. So Thursday, let's say to end the week, Thursday and Friday. Throw in the chat what you think. Green, red, or flat to end the week after earnings report happens. And of course, this is a two-part question almost, because you have to first guess what earnings is and second, how the stock will react to it. But I just want to get a gauge from everyone in the community of where are we heading into this week? Like, are people generally wow, people are generally bearish? It seems like everyone generally, wow. Red. Okay, a couple of greens here. DRK's flat, red, flat. Wow. Red, wow. I'm trying to remember, because you guys know I love to get gauges from the community, because at the end of the day, it's kind of a hive mind that we have. I can't remember the last time. Wow. Folks, look at the chat above my head too. This is unreal. I don't think I've seen sentiment on the stock, at least not on the company, let's say. Let's caveat that. Being this negative heading into an earnings. That's right. Elon is being interviewed by Tucker tonight. Forgot about that. Red, flat. Well, here's the thing also, right? I do worry about whenever Elon makes like these public, let's not say publicity stunts, but these PR campaigns almost, right? Something is happening on behind the scenes. The last time, do you guys remember when he was at the Dave Chappelle comedy show and then he was going viral and then he was making some interviews? That was the week he sold shares, right? So whenever Elon is out there, out and about, I think he did a Nelk interview after the Tesla shareholders meeting as well. So, it just it gets my gears going of, okay, like what's happening in the background here. But of course it is blackout period anyway, so I'm not suggesting that Elon is selling shares right now. He can't be. But anyways, I digress. But it's interesting seeing, and there's a couple of greens sprinkled in here. HK saying Tesla event days are not good for the stock. Depressed. Green into earnings, but red after. Okay. Interesting. I am I'm not shocked, but I'm generally surprised a little bit with how red everyone is expecting this week to be. So I guess we'll see. And by week, I meant Thursday, Friday after, right? So it is what it is. I guess we'll find out. A good Tesla earnings report would be a surprise on the gross margin on the upside and signaling some sort of cost reductions, like tangible cost reductions happening for their new factories. Of course, that's going to fall into gross margin, but even breaking it out and talking about, I think a couple quarters ago, they said, okay, well, look, Berlin is finally gross margin flat, and then coming out and saying, look, we had the highest gross margins from Berlin and they were higher than 15% or something, I think that'll go a long way. We're all jaded. Yeah, no kidding. I kind of feel like this too. And I have to be careful with it because, I realize that jadedness just as a personality trait is not one that is high on my want list, but I generally agree with the sentiment. I think it's easy to get jaded, especially in this macro. And of course, macro, we can talk about that for a second even, but macro is generally kind of setting ourselves up for almost a Fed pause. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but last week's numbers that we talked about, with inflation came in cool. Job numbers, or not job numbers, but retail sales came in cool as well. It's all kind of setting up for that Fed conversation that inevitably we're going to be having to deal with coming soon here. So we shall see. Okay, let's move on to this chart from our friend who I pull up charts from a lot, Roland Percher on Twitter. This is Tesla EPS versus Wall Street consensus. Let me move my fat head. There we go. So this is so the green line is Tesla non-GAAP EPS, and the orange line was the street consensus for each quarter going back. So as you can see here, generally speaking, non-GAAP EPS comes out higher than every street consensus in the past. And of course, I think this Wall Street consensus probably is GAAP EPS. That's my guess here. But as you can see here, last quarter, Q4, our Tesla non-GAAP EPS was $1.19. Street consensus is 85 cents as we talk today. So, I want to see it come over $1 at the very least. But it does seem like we're bracing ourselves for it to come under $1. Now remember, quarter one, generally speaking, in the auto market especially is a real weak quarter, right? Historic seasonality speaking, and that's across all auto companies. So Tesla's still coming higher than expected on deliveries based on previous year's data off of quarter four growth. It's great. But remember, it's not like Tesla, because last year Tesla had Omicron, I think, happen in quarter one, so that was some depressed numbers there. Then it was the chip shortage the year before. Then it was COVID the year before, so it was bound to come in higher. But at the end of the day, I guess we'll just have to see how the stock reacts. My prediction is really Tesla will probably fall close-ish in line with kind of street expectations, maybe miss on one key metric, and then probably have some sort of a Wall Street will probably have some sort of a fit about it to end the week is my guess. Let's see here. Hold on. Let's see here. Okay, awesome. Yeah, the Tucker Carlson interview today, I don't know what to expect. I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea what's going to happen from that. And quite frankly, you guys know, like, on this channel, I love to talk about stuff I love to talk about. And generally, I like to stay away from politics just because I think it's just a mudslinging contest, no matter where you go, left, right, or center. So I guess we'll see where all this lands. It's just really not what I'm interested in, not what I'm focused on. I know we can talk about all this sort of stuff, but I like to talk about numbers, projections, where the EV market's headed, and love to hang out with you guys. So for me, it's just a little bit of it's kind of a nothing burger if I can even respectfully say that. It's just, and of course, everyone can do whatever they want. Everyone has their own personal freedom and individuality, but just not really interested in it. If I was interested in it, trust me, I would be talking about it with you guys right now. But I'm just not. I'm advertising for a cardiologist. No, not a cardiologist, but you guys talk about a heart on. Oh, hold on. Why is there? I don't know what heart you're talking about. Is there like a YouTube membership? Is it like a YouTube membership heart or something? I don't know. Yeah, like this chat, if you're a member, of course, you're up as a Juju or as an Elon emoji on the YouTube chat. But on my screen chat, I can't even see it. It's so small. I have no idea. Okay, awesome. How's it going, Vern? Yeah, there's a couple people actually tuning in. Vern's one of them. Just arrived in Holland, 12-hour Tesla drive. And it was, I think, Brandon as well. Shout out to Brandon. He said he's driving to Texas right now for the Starship launch. So there's a lot of stuff happening in the Tesla universe. The Elon universe, I guess, is probably a better way to put it. Okay. In the bottom right corner of the chat. Oh, there's a heart. Oh, that's a YouTube thing. Yes, you can throw in pretty much I think what they're trying to do is copy like Periscope back in the day. If you guys remember Periscope, they used to be like you can throw in hearts. I have no idea. I have no customization on that. It's the new AI. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, we don't even have to talk about brand image and all that stuff. I know that's a hot topic as well, but we'll see. Yeah, let's talk about Cybertruck for a hot second. We talked about Cybertruck last week. I got your guys' guesses in, and everyone seems to think it's coming out fall of this year, maybe end of fall this year. That's the general consensus I got from the chat last Sunday. Now, I still think Cybertruck is such a huge, just monumental mind shift of the Tesla current ownership group / investor base that I just cannot wait for the Cybertruck to come out, which is why I push for stuff like the Cybertruck road trip that was supposed to happen a couple of years back before COVID. Elon said that there was going to be a Cybertruck roadie and they were going to take it across the country, and they were probably going to do some sort of PR campaign with it. Trigger word for people that hate PR. And there was going to be this huge road trip. I'm pushing for that. I tweeted about it. I think you guys should as well. And I'm excited to finally see the Cybertruck, but my expectations of timeline are not as bullish as what I think everyone is expecting here in the chat. But I guess we'll see. We'll really try. I really want to be wrong on it as well. And yes, we got the Giga Wiper news as well. Let me see if I can try to pull it up here. Hold on. Giga Wiper. Let's see. I'm sure someone called it that right here. Actually, thank you, Hanif. So this is the wiper. Oh, hold on. Don't copyright me. YouTube, stop it. Okay. So this is the Giga Wiper. I'm going to try to zoom in here just a tad. That's a huge freaking wiper. Just one wipe. I don't know how I feel about this. It's kind of weird, but I mean, it's the Cybertruck. It's not supposed to be normal, right? So, you know, I guess I'm still waiting for that laser action to come across, and I'll zoom in a little bit here because I know it's probably hard to see. But that wiper, I'm just thinking, like, through the snow, going through that, I'm not sure how that'll do. I guess we'll see. A lot of people love the wiper in the chat. Okay, I like it. It is what it is. Look, at the end of the day, if you're getting the Cybertruck, you're not getting it so it can look normal. And so I guess it's just another talking point. Like, look at us. We're talking about a freaking wiper on a car because that's how cool this thing is, right? I'm just excited because I think this wiper thing was really it was a hot controversial topic for some time, and everyone was saying, well, until they figure out this wiper thing, they're not going to be launching this car. So it's good to see this thing finally coming to fruition and ride. And we've obviously had videos of it riding around town as well. Okay. Awesome. Vert says, I'm trying to meet up with Marco Yolo in Holland on Tuesday evening whilst I'm here. Juju Gang has gone global, brother. Shout out to you guys and everyone that meets up without me. Just please let me know because I want to give you guys a shout out. That's awesome. 2 awesome members of our community meeting up together internationally. Amazing. And I don't want to set expectations yet, but we're looking at perhaps going to Amsterdam this fall as our gateway into Europe. I should probably preface by saying. So maybe we'll do like a Europe meetup by the end of the year or something. I don't know. Again, I don't want to set expectations too high because I know we have a lot of awesome people in Europe and we'd have enough demand there. At least I'd hope so. But I'm just throwing that out. Very preliminary. We haven't decided on dates or where or anything like that. But we're hopefully, Avi really just wants to go to Europe for the honeymoon. So we just don't know where yet. Jan, thank you so much for the 14 Swedish krone super chat. Appreciate you, my friend. Rich said I'm meeting up with Bob. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Well, what's the supers? I have to pull it up on my YouTube. This actual sticker. Oh yeah, that looks like a Juju. It's a good enough Juju Peach. I appreciate that, my friend. Okay, so let's move on, shall we? So Gary tweets this Bloomberg screenshot, and I like to go through Bloomberg terminal data a lot. But he says, a few investors asked me today why my Tesla price target has dropped so much over the past 6 months. The short answer, China demand issues in quarter 3 and 4, and the year-to-date price cuts have driven down my 2023 EPS estimates by over 32% in the last 6 months and by 25% year-to-date. Lower earnings estimates means lower price targets. Generally speaking, this is true, of course. Okay, let's pull this up here and let's zoom. Oh, you know what I gotta do? I gotta move my fat head into screen number 2. Okay, so if you look at EPS estimates, you'll see here 6 months ago, EPS estimates for Tesla for this fiscal year were $5.90, $5.89. Okay, 6 months ago. The current estimate for 2023 EPS is $3.98. So you can see EPS estimates have dropped a lot. And so if you talk about, and there's date specific estimates here, the red line is the EPS estimate here, and the white line is the stock price. You can see here there was quite the discrepancy between what EPS estimates were and what the stock price was telling us. Some say, I guess the question is the tail wagging the dog, or is that the saying? Whatever. You guys know what I'm trying to hint at. Is it that EPS is the leading indicator and the stock price was trailing and catching up, or was the stock the leading indicator to the EPS estimates that have now come down? That's the $1 million question. But the bottom line lies within Tesla is right, and it's hard to look at this chart because there's 2 y-axes technically here, but Tesla is pretty much right in line with EPS estimates with the stock price on a historical basis if you pin it to the first quarter of 2022 on the axes. So all to say, EPS estimates have to come back up for Tesla stock to continue to grow. And of course, this interest rate environment also makes it a little bit hard for people to get excited about auto. But again, the whole thesis here we have with Tesla is that Tesla is not a full auto company with its software like margins, and it can continue to have operating leverage as it ramps up new factories. So a lot going on here, but it's always good to get a catch up of this chart here. Shout out to Gary for that. On my narrowboat. I don't even know what a narrowboat is. I probably should know. Thank you though. Okay. Let's see here. Gary is a bearish bull, says Richard. Yeah, Gary, I think Gary likes to keep it pretty unbiased. He's, of course, he will tell you himself that his number one position is Tesla. He loves Tesla. But I think Gary is very methodical with the way that he evaluates Tesla by not trying to be so blind about negative points and almost making it a point to point that out. But then also obviously owning Tesla, which makes him obviously a Tesla bull by that trade. So like everyone, like I always say all the time, to me it doesn't matter if someone's a bull or a bear. Let's not fight them. Let's not fight their character. The point is, let's fight the facts and let's fight what they're arguing for. Now, of course, if someone shows themselves to be in bad faith, it's hard to take anything they say seriously. But I don't think Gary's one of them. And also, I don't really. There's a lot of. I find it on Twitter. I'm finding it a lot in the last month. There's a lot of defensiveness on Twitter with certain points. People attacking others for having different viewpoints. Just don't think that's a healthy way to go about it. So we'll see. Yeah, so Highland is a good topic as well. We're seeing Model 3 Highland project, the kind of revised Model 3 going around, driving around with the front being covered up. The question is, what entails the new Highland project? What sort of cost savings are we going to see from it? Is it mostly cost savings, or is it a new model for the sake of a new model? And Nick Carter here throws in Highland is Giga Castings 4680s, new drivetrain, better suspension, lighter, and $30,000. Well, look, in some states like Oregon, I forget who was it that tweeted this out. I almost forget who tweeted this out, but there was that tweet of how cheap you can get a Tesla in Oregon. Actually, it was Sawyer. So check this out. Move myself here. Sawyer tweets out, with this price drop until April 17th. Hey, that's tomorrow. Folks, get in line. You can get a new Model 3 Standard Range Plus in Oregon. Sorry, I by the way, I always substitute out rear wheel drive for Standard Range Plus. And that's mostly because, first, that's just what I'm embedded with. But two, I have a hard time saying it, for God's sakes. Anyways, in Oregon for as low as $25,490, including Fed, state, and local incentives. When the Fed incentive drops and state incentive goes away later this month, the price will effectively be $36,000 on May 1st. Take delivery quick. And so there's some context here on the bottom. Qualification, yeah, I'm not entirely sure about how the qualification rules are on that, but man, I mean, 25,000. I guess the question is how many people can get it. And hey, look at this. Even Rob Maurer said Tesla should absolutely be advertising in Oregon right now. Look at that. We got Rob on board on the advertising train. It's always good to have Rob there. Okay, good. So I guess we'll see where everything goes from here. DRK says Gary's very conservative, but doesn't put the inputs we often add, like streamlining costs. Yes. I mean, Gary, and to be fair, I'm like this too. I like to see the cost savings before I project them to be a material portion of the model, just because, I mean, who's to say, right, what happens? So, and again, that's the alpha almost, right? Institutions, Wall Street, these bigger hedge funds, these guys can't put their neck out on the line and say, look, Tesla's going to reduce costs by 40%, just like they said they would, because they said they would. They almost have to see it happen before. So it almost has to slap them in the face before they can actually talk about it. So that's the bottom line. And I think, that's alpha for either side, depending on who's right, who's wrong, right? Yeah, that's true. I've been to Portland once. Let's just leave it at that. I've been to Portland once. Good donuts. Okay, cool. So let's move on. Tesla is now accepting questions for their quarter 1 earnings call on Say. So let's check out what the highest voted questions are for Tesla earnings this quarter. So most shares voted on retail is the number 1 question. Do you still believe Tesla Energy will be bigger than auto? And when will you provide more formal guidance on Megapack and overall energy? Let's rate this question 1 to 10. What would you guys rate this question? Do you still believe Tesla Energy will be bigger than auto? And when will you provide more formal guidance on Megapack and overall energy? What would you guys rate this question? I'm going to say this question is very broad and it opens up Elon for a 1 or 2 sentence answer. That's really going to provide us no guidance. But I do like the bigger than auto question. I don't know if he's going to answer it. I mean, there's a balance here, right? You can ask whatever you want, but you almost have to ask stuff that you know actually might get answered. DRK is saying 5, 2 out of 6. Let's see out of 10 if possible. 9. Richard, 2. Okay, so not a lot of love for this question. I'm surprised it's the highest voted question here. Interesting. So interesting. I don't know how it's the highest voted question here, but it is what it is. I think what Elon will probably say to this is, I think energy is going to be a huge business. He's going to talk about how there's literally cost savings in this commodity type of business. Tesla's the only one that can do it. And of course, Tesla's software advantage in energy. And then guidance. No, I don't think he'll provide any guidance. I don't think Zach would either. 2 out of 10, 4. Okay. Second question. Can you give updated specs and pricing for Cybertruck and any new features that would make it to production? Okay, let's rate this question. Can you give any updated specs and pricing for Cybertruck and any new features that will make it to production? Will Elon answer this? No. I would be very shocked if he's like, yeah, we put up this new wiper and we have this laser technology here and, the center dash is going to have... No, I doubt it. So for that alone, I really don't think this question is high on my list because I just don't think he'll answer it. Of course, if we were to assume that that Elon was going to answer all these questions perfectly, different story, right? Hey, shout out to Emmett. Thanks for joining us, man. By the way, actually, that reminds me. I'm going to throw into the chat if anyone wants to comment on stream, have video, audio. You can be on mobile too. Anyone want to give any comments? Feel free to come on. I threw it in the chat. Okay. So for that, I'm probably going to give this question a 4.5, 5 maybe, because I still like the question, but I don't think it'll get answered. And by the way, I think specs and pricing, I care more about the pricing side. And here's the thing, you guys know I've been harping on this for a while. Cybertruck will be close, and by close, I mean 3 to 6 months out, when we get new pricing. Because Tesla will not just randomly surprise all the reservation holders with a 25% uptake on price unless they're giving them about a quarter or more of lead time to come up with that money, right? It just wouldn't be a good business play for them. So Cybertruck will be close once we get updated pricing. And since we haven't already, I think we're still in for some time here. Okay, next question. Man, these are a lot of votes here for these questions. How well are the 4680 cells meeting the expectations described on battery day? How long will it be until the cells meet those goals? Folks, okay, and go ahead, rate this one 0 to 10. Did we not just go through a lot of this? I think it was last earnings call, Tesla shareholder meeting, and then investor day even, I think, right? Did we not just go through a lot of this? I forget what the venue was because I remember Lee, Tesla Economist, was talking about the answers that we got generally from them as well. Of course, this matters, but I swear I thought we just talked about this with Elon. It's all a blur. It's all a blur to me now. Yeah, no chance. Marco says Tesla will answer Cybertruck price question. Agreed. But we're probably going to get an email, I think, let's say in the next 2 or 3 months saying, hey, thanks for being a reservation of the Cybertruck. your Cybertruck cost has gone up by 30%, but we're still honoring your FSD. No problem. I think that's the way that they're going to pitch this thing. I think that's what don't quote me on this. This is what I think they're going to do. If you reserved a Cybertruck for 50K, 5K of that was FSD. Now FSD is 15K. They're going to say, well, if you bought a Cybertruck now, it'd be 70K plus 15K, so 85. Instead, we're going to let you keep your reservation for 5K on FSD, and you're only going to pay us 75. I think that's the way that they're going to sell this thing. Okay, so not a lot of love for actually, hold on. It's very, actually, Sunny and Hanif are giving this question really high. So, okay, so we shall see. Can you give any updated, and this is the 4th highest voted question. Can you give any updates regarding solar roof production expectations and further goals? It's just very broad. I don't know. I'm not even going to rate this question. Let's move on. You previously stated a goal to reach 80% of the Tesla car owners with Tesla insurance. When will that goal be met? When is the adoption rate of Tesla insurance? When is it available? What's the average annual savings? Look, folks, this is it's an easy cop-out question. All they have to say is, we're expanding. We've expanded a lot. The states that we're not in, they're not playing ball with us. They're not letting us do this. But once they do, we'll be there. Like, it's a very black and white question. I just don't know. And what's the annual average savings? I mean, who cares right now? That's just my question. That's just my comment on that question. Are your cost reductions and inflationary input prices on commodities outpacing auto MSRP reductions to your liking now and to the foreseeable future? Okay, so decent question there. Okay. Decent question there. Okay. They're probably going to say, yeah, we are. And then Elon's going to insert probably a statement about cars are just a function of price elasticity for users. So, okay, let's go to most question. Hold on. How do we do institutional only? Can we filter out institutional only? Hold on. In the past I could do institutional. Where's the highest institutional? Is it not out? Oh, maybe it's just not out yet. These are all retail questions. Interesting. I don't see any institutional questions here yet. Oh, hold on. Here it is. Wow. The most highly rated institutional question is all the way on the bottom of this list. Wow, that's very surprising. The top institutional question is, can Tesla maintain the guided 20% auto gross margin X credit floor if further price cuts are necessary to drive the company's 1.8 million unit volume guidance? I actually think Zach probably would answer this, and then he would deflect to operating margin instead. But I think they probably would answer this, although it's not very juicy because 20% is not amazingly exciting on the 1.8. You know, if it was like a 25, I think it's different. Guess we'll see. Wow, folks, there's no institutional questions on this sucker yet. I guess they're all waiting for this week to see what happens. Because they're waiting for the Tucker Carlson interview before they throw in their questions. The second, man, this is very low on the list. When should we expect the next milestone for FSD that would trigger a material release of deferred revenue? Very short-term thinking question. I think the answer to this is when FSD gets out of beta. Yeah. So, wow. Institutions do not care about this earnings report. Look how many retail questions there are sorted by high. This is the highest institutional question rated by shares. And look, I'm scrolling. No one is voting for any institutional questions. And my guess is really that institutions just haven't plugged in their questions yet. And they're all probably masterminding this weekend. Which question are we going to vote on together so we know that it gets answered? Because I would do the same thing if I'm Morgan Stanley, Burns. Did I just say? I was about to say Burns Stearns. Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan. I'm coming together in a group chat. I'm saying, folks, what questions do we care about? And let's all vote for them so they guarantee to get asked this earnings. Why not? Yeah, get Kelly back to ask the institutional questions. Remember that? Let's go to YouTube. Awesome. Okay. Let's pull up Yahoo Finance. So Yahoo Finance is back at it. Talk about Tesla global expansions to be are all about a sub $30,000 car. Let's listen to what they have to say. Let me know if my audio is coming in clear. Let's pull up everything on the chat. Let's take a listen.
Twitter no longer exists, at least as a standalone company here, technically speaking. The Elon Musk-owned social network is merging with a new shell company called X Corp. That's according to a California court document from a lawsuit filed against the company and its former CEO, Jack Dorsey, by conservative activist Laura Loomer. Now, Musk first hinted at what he called X, the everything app,
Is the audio okay on that?
last fall, before his purchase of Twitter was finalized, likening the idea to something resembling the Chinese app WeChat, which is used in a number of capacities, including messaging, payments, and booking tickets. The move has sparked considerable speculation online about what is next for the platform, and though Tesla CEO has been pretty vague about specifics, he did tweet out X very early this morning, which has since garnered nearly 30 million views. Well, speaking of Elon Musk, let's talk about Tesla. Shares moving to the upside today, up just about 2% with about 40 minutes to go until the closing bell. The EV giant announcing this week that it's building a mega pack battery factory in Shanghai, China. But what does this all mean for Tesla's broader expansion plans? Joining me now, Dan Ives is here in studio. Wedbush
Green tidal wave. Drink.
Managing Director and Senior Equity Analyst. We've also got our autos reporter, Pras Subramanian, here at the desk with us. Dan, what do you just give us a sense of how significant this?
By the way, I love that little profile shot they have to do before they get into the debate, where you just like stare at the camera, have like a slight smirk, and then you turn to your guests. I love that about mainstream media.
And why specifically Shanghai, do you think?
Well, I mean, the hearts and lungs of Tesla are in China. And regardless of all the talk out there, I mean, they're doubling down on China in terms of this battery factory. And you look at what they've done in terms of just manufacturing. I mean, China, not just from a supply, but demand perspective, that continues to be one of the key ingredients for success. I think that was almost a flex the muscles moment in terms of what you saw here.
So I think it makes sense for them to build these battery packs in China where the materials are, the expertise is, you can build them cheaply. Do you think Tesla can kind of shake off the governmental sort of overreach there? Can they kind of, have them ignore that and still kind of perform there? Or is it going to be a overhang for the company as Washington kind of gears up against China?
Sure, it's great. I mean, with Big Brother watching in Beijing, I mean, look, that's the tightrope that both Musk as well as Cook walk in terms of what we've seen. I mean, that's where production for iPhone as well as a lot of the Model 3, Model Ys are. Look, I think.
Correct. And this is really the hot topic, right? While Tesla's doubling down on China, how do we have to discount their earnings because of pending war, geopolitical risk? And yes, the iPhones, of course, manufactured their Apple big Chinese presence, but Apple has really been tapering off of China and actually going into India for manufacturing. So take that with however you want.
I think ultimately, they'll start to build out in the U.S., but I think this is a signal, and I expect Musk to also be spending some more time in China. That's one of their core advantages in terms of what you see with the Gigafactory there. And you look at batteries, I mean, that is really going to be the sort of the golden goose in terms of going forward.
Dan, you mentioned maybe we could see more plants, more factories here within the U.S. Musk has a goal of 20 million vehicles to be produced by the year 2030. If that goal is going to be achieved, how many plants do you think could potentially be necessary?
Look, I think it's first thing first, right? Making sure they don't trip over their shoelace. I mean, especially right now, they're cutting prices. Demand's been strong, but I mean, that's a balance, especially with the price war in China. But you see in terms of Mexico, I think Indonesia's next. You're going to continue to see more and more factories out there, but that's going to require CapEx. And I think it's also important right now that if you look at what's happening in Europe, you look at Austin, I think those are the keys in terms of Berlin as well as Austin, ramping those. And of course, in longer term, there's going to be a lot more things behind that.
Do you think Canada is the most likely destination, given the IRA sort of influence there?
I think it checks every box. And I think when you look at Canada, you look at Indonesia, those are the ones that make the most sense. And then of course,
could not be more different, right? Those two countries. Look, you guys know I've gotten excited about this Canadian Giga news for a while. I'm not going to get excited about it right now until I hear it, see it for my own 4 eyes. I'm not believing it until I actually see it.
Of course, they'll continue to expand. I think for right now, I think you take a step back, it is really the scale and scope. I mean, you look at a lot of the other, whether it's Lucid, whether it's some of the 313 area code, GM, Ford, a lot easier said than done. I think right now, that's why they're trying to put an iron fence around their backyard.
What about Mexico, the new plant that they announced there that is located there? How critical is that just in terms of Tesla diversifying its supply chain and really getting ahead of any potential types of issues?
Well, also it's about a sub $30,000 car. I mean, you're not getting a sub 30K car if that's being built in Europe or Austin. And I think it's sort of carrot and the stick. That's what everyone's waiting for here. But because to get to, as you talk about, some of the longer term goals, you need to be mass market, you need to be sub 30,000. But then I think the big debate going into next week is margins. Like, what do margins look like? We believe at least this quarter they'll be able to sort of toe the line in the sand. But if you continue to get significant price cuts, look, that's the work. Look, I think we're going to get more price cuts. I think they're containable. But I think, especially in China, that's really right now the biggest variable. They've been able to navigate, I think, extremely well. That's why the stock's done what it's done. But I think that continues to really be navigating this next step is what investors are focused on. So
look at that Photoshop right there. It cut off the entire front fender there. Anyways, yes. I mean, the point is, the question is margins at the end of the day. Now, if Tesla has the goal of lowering prices on the 3 by so much that they can even get that to the $30,000 level, right, with EV rebates, let's say, different story. And we don't have to talk about advertising that. But I think one argument that I've seen online that I think is important to highlight here is, by backstopping a price on a car, you essentially tell consumers, we're not going to be selling this car for less. But if you're buying a Model 3 today, how sure are you that it's not just going to depreciate by another 3,000 by next week because Tesla lowers its prices again, right? It's like the self-fulfilling cyclical downward spiral on prices that you kind of leave consumers holding the bag for. And then consumers are starting to think, well, if I buy this car and they lower prices like they have in, next month again, well, I'm out that money. Whereas if you kind of say this is our backstopped price on it, we'd rather put our efforts into demand gen to keep that price locked in at that floor level at the very least, and not just continually lower prices forever, because then it just disincentivizes people to buy the car, considering that they're going to be losing that money once the inevitable price cuts do happen.
Do you think these sort of 5 price cuts this year alone, is that really indicative of a demand problem, or is it more about them sort of going after competition like GM and Ford and just sort of growing the market share?
Look, I think it's a softer macro, and I think we saw that last year. So you got to just read the room, rip the Band-Aid off, and that's what they've done. So I think the first step has been what I view as just a massive poker move that's paid off. But it's competition. Whether it's 313 Eric, whether it's Europe, you got Lucid, you got everyone coming. They can't just sit there high in their chair and not cutting prices. And I think that's essentially what's happening now. But because of the margins, they have that flexibility. Look, the haters are going to continue to hate on Tesla no matter what they do. So far this year, it's been a massive bet. Next week's important just in terms of that margin story. That's really going to be the front and center.
You guys know how I feel about this graph. Just stock prices. Remember, I'm on team Let's Show Market Cap.
How worried should Tesla be about competitors? Obviously, it probably has something to do with the price cuts, but just given the number of EV models, new EV models that have either been brought to market already or with plans to come to market, a number were on display at the New York Auto Show this year. How big of a threat do you see some of those models being specifically to Tesla?
Yeah, I mean, it's still Tesla's world, everyone else paying rent in terms of
Boom. Drink to that.
EV landscape. But in terms of everything Marion and the team are doing at GM, I think that's probably the one that could have the biggest ripple effect. That's something that, competitively speaking, but you got lower price cars. You look at what's happening on the Cadillac. You got a lot of the models coming out, over the coming years.
They sold 2 Hummers, right? I mean, I think the Lyric did 1,000 or something, 2,000 maybe. Like, what? I
think that's the broader thing is that you have what I'll call an EV arms race going on, but I do not view it as a zero-sum game. I mean, I view this as...
That is true. I do agree with that.
It's a green tidal wave, the biggest...
Green tidal wave.
Transformation to the auto industry since 1950s, but at the top of that mountain is Musk and Tesla, and everyone's trying to play catch-up.
So far, really, Tesla's the only kind of EV maker at scale, right, across the globe. We talked about GM and Ford earlier today in the green room. They're coming on strong, new competition. Are there any sort of potential hiccups for them trying to get to scale? Like, I feel like that is a very difficult thing for any automaker, let alone legacy, to get to that EV scale.
One, also, it's easier when Tesla's doing it under a different magnascope and microphone, because you look what's happened with GM, maniacal focus by the street in terms of margins, but yet Tesla was held to a different standard because of credit. So I do believe it's an apples to oranges comparison. I think GM, I think what Farley and Ford are doing are, I think, great steps, but easier said than done in terms of that scale, production, battery. But I do believe we sit here 2-3 years from now, I think GM could be a double, in my opinion, as they get ultimately find success converting to that massive EV base. And that, along with Tesla and some of the pure plays like Lucid, you look at NIO, Xpeng, and some others in China, there's not just one way to play it. Tesla continues to be our favorite play.
Certainly expecting massive growth there across the industry over the...
That's really the problem with like betting against legacy auto companies. Of course, they have a lot of debt. A lot of it might be captive. But the question is, like, at the end of the day, is the U.S. government really going to let these companies just frail away with the amount of political backing, union backing, and of course, employees, good people that work for these companies, good jobs that are made? Of course, we know technological disruption, doesn't feel great for a lot of industries. But are we going to see another, let's say, bailout loan, whatever you want to call it? And I think GM Altium's division just got a $3 billion or some $1 billion worth of a loan. Are we just going to see them disappear, even though economics might point us that way? That's the question. And I said this a couple of weeks ago. I said, the reason why Ford is divvying out their EV line items off of their earnings now is because I think they're going to subdivide their company, or they're going to branch out their company into the EV only company. And that old way that we know Ford might just be the way of the dodo. We might just never see it. It might just cease to exist. But they're going to have that backing of that EVs to maybe raise money on moving forward. So interesting times indeed. Now, so this one has kind of got me riled up, right? So Tesla no longer has the best EV on the market. Cantor's Fitzgerald Shepard says. So let's see what he has to say with what EV is the best one, because apparently it's not a Tesla.
Here for more on this shift is Michelle Krebs, Cox Automotive Executive Analyst, and Andre Shepard, Cantor Fitzgerald Senior Analyst. It's great to have you both along. Michelle, let's just start with what we know about how much of the, I think it's safe to say we've all been surprised at the speed to which globally we've switched to EVs. Will America always lag?
It seems like that. I think we're asking a lot of the consumer. One of the biggest obstacles to EV adoption here in the U.S. is the price. The average electric vehicle costs $58,000. Now, that's lower than it was last year at $66,000, but it's still higher than the $48,000 of a new vehicle.
Well, look, if it's down from her numbers, right, 66 down to 58, man, year over year, that's a great declining of average cost of an EV. Of course, we should probably look at median as well. Average really doesn't matter. But that's a huge cost savings, because in a couple of more years, it's going to be nothing but a no-brainer, especially when you factor in what everyone misses, maintenance on an EV, also depreciation that you don't get as much as a gas car.
So it knocks a lot of people out. The math just knocks a lot of people out of the market.
Sure. So basically, even though respondents themselves are worried about EV charging, you think price. I mean, listen, price can be solved. At some point, the government, as it's trying to do, can just start handing rebates out right and left. And it seems like what people and consumers are saying, Michelle, is that they're skeptical that even if they could afford an EV, that it's kind of ready for showtime.
Well, right. And I was going to say the second obstacle to adoption is that EV charging infrastructure. It's growing, but
if you have a plug at home, great. You can charge in a regular outlet if you don't drive more than 40 kilometers a day. I guess Americans drive a lot more than I'm used to. But if you have a laundry, if you have a laundry machine or dryer plug in your garage, perfect. Now you can charge up level 2. Great.
One of the big complaints we're hearing now is that when people get to those charging stations, they aren't maintained, they're broken. So we've not only got a
Yes, because they're run by Electrify America, which has no incentive to actually keep these amazingly going. And they have to download an app. You have to up. My rule of thumb is if I gave something to a grandpa, they should be able to figure it out within 5 minutes, kind of like the iPhone experience. If they can't, this is not going to work long-term at scale.
Build out the
By the way, shout out to grandpa and grandmas out there. No offense to you guys.
charging infrastructure. We've also got to figure out a way to keep it maintained.
Andres, can the charging infrastructure be ramped up sufficiently in time to meet what appears to be very ambitious plans from the Biden administration, which could, of course, be reversed in a new administration?
Right. And good afternoon. Thanks for having us back on. And so we think that is the case. You know, according to Bloomberg, there were over 10.5 million EVs sold last year. In the U.S., that number was over 800,000, which represented roughly a 70% increase year over year. And that's despite the economic environment that we are in. As you alluded to, EVs in this country accounted for roughly 7% of all vehicles sold. But in places like California, that number is significantly higher, around 19%. And so we are seeing an uptick in demand, and we expect that to continue. And we remain bullish on both Rivian and on Lucid over the long term. I think the issue that we are seeing is around production and supply. Both Rivian and Lucid have guided how many vehicles they expect to deliver this year. For Rivian, that's 50,000. For Lucid, that's 10 to 14,000.
10 to 14,000. Like we're just, you're talking 7.25 or 7.5 year, 3.5 a quarter, 1,000 a month.
By comparison, Tesla delivered 1.3 million vehicles last year. We don't cover Tesla, but they are guiding to deliver 1.8 million vehicles this year. So they're still, in fact, the market leader, although we are seeing that market share begin to diminish. And in our view, that's a result of them no longer having the best vehicles out there. You look at Lucid, and they've been able to achieve a battery range of 520 miles, which is confirmed by the EPA. And we think that's an important differentiator. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly these companies can continue.
Look, if you don't have a path to profitability or to unit economics at work, you can't scale at the end of the day. You can build off these one-off prototypes that don't work in at scale. The question here is, can we build something as a nation, as a humanity, that has a lot of range, but also at the end of the day, you have to realize past a certain point, let's say 300 miles, 400 miles, every additional marginal mileage there is almost unneeded. You're just carrying this extra mileage around for no reason because you're never going to really use it. And wherever you do use it, you're going to have charging stations that you can stop at for 10 minutes and continue your trip. So really what everyone likes to think is we need 1,000 miles per every car. But the realistic bottom line is you're not going to be using that, and you're going to be lugging this thing around, and you don't have to be. So I think it's kind of a misnomer in the space that everyone thinks more mileage is good. And obviously at a point, it's additional, but there's a marginal decrease at a certain point where all of a sudden you're not using that extra mileage. What is the point, right? I'm telling you from experience, we have 420 kilometers of range. Let's say, I'm going to go back to kilometers because that's all I'm comfortable with. 420 kilometers of range. When we were going on a road trip for 12 hours, I had to stop and pee every 2 or 3 hours anyways. So for me to drive more than 350 kilometers straight without stopping is just not going to happen. So when I have to stop, I go to the bathroom, I come back 10 or 15 minutes, I can supercharge from 20% to 60, 70%. Well, great. Now I can get to my next stop. So at the end of the day, if you extend that 420 kilometer range to 900 kilometers, it doesn't really do me any marginal good because I still have to stop. And that's really the balancing act that everyone, I think, that doesn't have an EV still has yet to realize, because they just go 420 kilometers. I can drive that, in nothing, and it's going to go away. I mean, fine, maybe, but at the end of the day, you're talking about edge cases when 99.9% of your use cases don't fall within that. So I think it's important to be educated on this sort of stuff. So the 520 mile Lucid that probably has negative 90% gross margin that can never be built at a massive scale is just not gonna be beneficial, right? So I think it's important to keep that in mind. Let's move on. On the last, for our last segment of the show, let's bring on Tony, who I think just plugged into the show here. Friend of the show. Tony's been on quite some time. How's it going, my friend?
Hey, Ash, how are you doing? I'm doing good.
Good. I'm doing well, man.
So I've had this theory about Tesla in Canada, or I guess Tesla building a gigafactory in Canada, and this came up earlier. And since you're Canadian, I'm curious what you think about this. I I think, and maybe this is a little bit of an edge sort of benefit, but I think that there's an upside to like Quebec specifically as a location for a factory for the obvious reasons of there's all these materials there, and there are these mines being set up for I think it's lithium and graphite and stuff. But another sort of weird benefit is I think it would allow Tesla to recruit French speaking engineers. And when I think about like the limiting factor for Tesla growing, it's engineers, and like, operating in Germany and China, obviously gigafactories here in the US, and now they're building one in Mexico. You've got most of the major languages covered, and then French is one that isn't covered yet. So I've always thought about like what kind of upside there is potential there, them being able to effectively brain drain like the French speaking world or France. And I also know that in Canadian politics, just from what I've read, I mean, I've never been to Canada, so it's just stuff that I hear about. The French language in Canada or in Quebec is a really big deal. So if Tesla were to go to the Quebec like provincial government and say, hey, we could bring in all these engineers who would want to work for us, these top tier engineers, what special considerations would the government give them, knowing that they're going to bring in like that's exactly the kind of people that they want to bring in. And I'm curious if you have any insights into this as a Canadian, or what your thoughts are.
I mean, it's funny because so Quebec, there's always like this arm wrestling match between Quebec and the rest of Canada, because there's a subsegment of people in Quebec who are predominantly French speaking that want Quebec to be its own nation, right? Quebec separatism. And so it's funny. And I've been to Montreal, and I felt like this, and my friends from Montreal disagree with me, but I felt like I needed to know French better to live there full time if I were ever to live there. So I definitely agree that there's a large segment of the population there that predominantly are French speakers. But are there millions of are there a lot of French engineers out there that you think this would make sense for? I just don't know if the French engineering populace is quite that big.
Right. And then there's then the second question too of like, if you are a really good engineer in France, like how many of them would want to move to Quebec, right? To like pursue a job at Tesla,
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah. I mean, I can't speak for French people, and I don't plan on doing that because I'm probably going to hear about it. But well, Gabby says in the chat, as a French native, I can say that we'll just go on strike. Well, I think a lot of people from France look down almost on Quebec because Quebecois French, because it's kind of like the slang urban version of French. They don't really consider it proper enough for them, right? And vice versa, I should say as well. So I don't know if that makes sense, but you know what point I think that does make sense for Quebec is I think there's a lot of grants there for renewable tech, but also I think with Quebec and Canada in general, you have the exchange rate benefit. In Canada, it's like immediately 30% cost savings as an American company, and the nominal value of salaries, to be honest, is not that different. So whereas you get a 30% cost savings as an American company coming in paying Canadians, and you don't have to increase salaries by 30%. You might have to increase by 10%, 20%. So there's some alpha to be had there in terms of cost savings. And of course, you can tie in with a program with a top rated university like McGill or something. So, right. There are options there.
Are there differences between the provinces? Because I know it's either Quebec or Ontario, right, to build this theoretical Tesla Gigafactory. Are there differences in how those governments behave with, like, rolling out the red carpet, or how much red tape is there for doing things like lithium extraction? Say they were to build another extraction facility to complement a materials miner or something.
Yeah. Well, I think the government, generally speaking, is pretty pro on that. So I think you'd be able to really greenlight a lot of efforts like that. And we've seen it. I think during Christmas time or end of December, we got that big Tesla project in Quebec. I'd have to pull up the article that was greenlit. It was a couple $100 million worth of a project that Tesla has in Quebec. So we've seen that happen from Tesla and Tesla working with Canadian government. But But the problem with Ontario is, and I've long kind of argued about, okay, well, they should do like, in kind of the Rust Belt of Canada, where there's like old school legacy automaker factories where there were really at large scale in like the Windsor area, Tesla could build like a plant there right beside Detroit, sort of. But I've gotten backlash on that because people say there's a lot of union mess around there that you have to deal with. And if Tesla were to come in, they'd have to really play ball. And with the union stuff, it's pretty big up here with certain industries. So I don't know all the ins and outs of it. Someone in the comments might know better, but it in general, like, of course, I think Canada is on the frontier, or tries to be, with a lot of good mining and renewable resources, and with Tesla in general. So I think you have something there, and people in the comments are actually saying the French immigration in Quebec is quite a big deal, and that there's a lot. Someone even called them Frengineers. So I think you're onto something here. But I just don't know it.
I think there are pretty good like engineering programs in France, but then that still gets to the question of how many French people could you attract to Quebec through something like that. But as the last thing I'll ask you, how, of the prospective places for the next gigafactories, how do you rank them? Like, what do you think in terms of what you think is most likely or has the most upside?
And this is a wild card, so I don't know if it's the number one on my list, but the one that I'm really looking forward to potentially is India. And that's because I think you can't look at another country in the world and say that they need renewable energy more than India. It's brutal with the amount of power outages. There's no sustainability there with utilities. And I think if you talk about disruption and actually affecting billions of people, India would have the highest leverage point for Tesla to do something massive, right? The problem with India is that they're very protective on their local industry. They have a lot of import taxes on stuff, and they don't like to play they don't like to play ball in the same way that China would. Let's say China, open arms, red carpet for Tesla. India is very protective. They're like, if you're coming in, you're paying for it. And there's kind of this riff here. But if you talk about magnitude of effect of billions of people, if Tesla were able to help billions of people in India get more, just have more sustainability and have more certainty with their utilities and their power and their electricity, and get off of a lot of coal burning, I think it would have a massive effect. That's what I'm excited about, because you talk about engineers. I mean, number one engineering hub in the world is India, right? So there could be something there. I just don't know if the government there is forward-leaning enough or progressive enough or smart enough to really play game with Tesla on this, unfortunately.
Well, I feel like we've seen in slow motion through the different leaks and different articles, like Tesla rolling the Indonesian government, right? I think that's what we've seen over the months. So we'll probably see something similar in the coming months and years in India. I think, just kind of them slowly working them over, rolling them over, and then they'll cave at some point. Because it seemed like that's what happened in Indonesia. Indonesia, like, they were trying to hold their cobalt card basically as like their strong hand, and slowly they started to fold to like, okay, it's okay if you guys just start with the battery factory. It's okay if if you at least build the battery factory here, we'll let you export a bunch of cobalt.
Yeah.
So
Indonesia was it's all battery. It's a battery play, and I think, at least to start, that might be like the Trojan horse, right? To just get in. But Indonesia, like, if I'm just talking grand scale, Indonesia needs Tesla more than Tesla would need Indonesia. You have that leverage there, at least from a macro perspective, at least the way I look at it. But if you talk about India, it's just different. India doesn't need Tesla. There's a lot of, and I see in the comments here, and I agree, there's a lot of corruption there at the higher level, bureaucracy level.
Oh, in Indonesia?
Well, Indonesia, I'm sure, is as well. I don't want to say that because I've never been there, but I'm sure it happens. But India, especially, there's a lot of corruption, right? Like, people have to get paid at the high levels for stuff to get passed, and even when it does get passed, they'll give you a hard time. It's just a mess in terms of corruption at the institutional level. And so that's not to say China or insert other country that Tesla is in is any better. But I just think it's more obvious to me from someone that's been to India a couple of times that the corruption there is pretty bad. So And protectionism is bigger there as well.
Yeah. Interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it turns out. I think Indonesia is probably the most likely. It's where I think next Gigafactory is going, and then Canada. Then after that, it's kind of too hard to say. Maybe Eastern Europe, like Poland. I wonder how many times they've like so many setbacks in Berlin. They've thought like should have built in Poland instead or something.
Yeah, not too far away. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I'm excited because I think Tesla also can just expand a lot of their current factories and not worry about it. Like Giga Texas is huge. Shanghai, we've already seen them expanding. So Berlin is huge. Like they can have Gigafactory 2.0 where with the amount of land that they bought in some of these places. And the real question is, with 4680s and the new processes, do they really need that much more space for the foreseeable future, or are these cost savings that they talked about in Battery Day actually going to come to fruition, and all of a sudden they don't need as many factories as we originally thought? Because if they don't, then they can be very picky with where they're going to go. One thing I will say, just to wrap it up, is I'll say Tulsa. How about Tulsa, Oklahoma? I mean, what happened to that? We already know that there were
Panasonic, like that location that Oklahoma really sold them hard on. I thought Panasonic picked that up. That was kind of like. Did
they?
I think I remember.
Maybe that's just
because I know that they went and visited there. Like Elon went there, kind of as a consolation. Like, hey, sorry that we chose this other place. You guys gave us it was really tough to decline it. And then afterwards, Panasonic came in and is going to build there. So
I definitely have probably got lost in the sauce for me on that, but. We know Tulsa is very pro Tesla, and they were back in the past. Why not just go back and visit it? I guess the overlap of geos might be too much for them, but if the amount of like they were rolling out the red carpet, so we already know that if they wanted to go back, they would probably get special treatment if they went back as well. So
certainly,
but anywhere they go, I think people will be happy if expansion is outside of China, because there's a lot of talk about, these earnings are great, EPS is great, but the dependency on China is really making this growth story. Like people are throwing this standardization on Tesla that wasn't really given to, let's say even Apple. So, I think anywhere that we go, anywhere that Tesla goes, if it's outside of China, I think it'll be perceived well from the market. And Mexico, of course, we have to talk about Mexico starting ground. And I think 12 to 15 months was the timeline for them to start producing cars.
Well, that speaks to like the upside of just double Austin again, or build in Tulsa. Like, manufacturing Canada, manufacturing North America is the safest play with where we're going. Like globalization's weird sort of changing, going to nearshoring, and that gets into some geopolitical politics stuff. But,
COVID changed everything. COVID really changed everything with geopolitics. Before it was very globalized, and now we see the power that a country like China can have with their lockdowns and what they do with their citizens, and the effect it can have directly to a foreign nation, that now everyone is talking about bringing everything back home. And that's what the Inflation Reduction Act is all about, I think.
Yep. Yeah. Awesome. Well,
right on.
Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you coming on. Cheers. Thanks, Tony, for coming on. And I'll wrap it up here as well on my end. It's been an hour and 20 minutes of fun talking with everyone here. Remember, big week ahead, Wednesday, Tesla earnings. It'll be exciting. We have a lot of earnings coming up. Go back and watch this stream if you missed any part of this. We talked about earnings to begin with, EPS estimates, gross margins. Then we talked a little bit about what say questions we'll have on, a little bit about Cybertruck. And then, of course, we talked about, we watched Yahoo Finance and CNBC and their thoughts on the price reductions. Go back and watch any part of it if you want. Much love to everyone. I'll answer just this question here. I see T. Nelly before I sign off. Elon said Twitter will take 4 weeks to overhaul and install a CEO. Wrong, by at least a year. Starting Chat GPT competitor will require Elon's focus for 10 years. How will Tesla suffer? Well, this is the $1 million question that everyone, wants to debate. The Tesla CEO, the Twitter CEO thing, Elon had that poll. Everyone said he should replace someone as CEO. I thought it generally meant that Elon knew who he was going to appoint as CEO. I'm with you there. I think that probably should happen. And Elon has said that Twitter is pointing towards cash flow positive this year. So I think that should have happened yesterday. But then again, with Elon, you can't tell him what to do. He's not going to, you can't really tell anyone what to do, to be fair. But especially with a creative genius like Elon, he's going to do what he wants to do and what fuels him. And, either you're okay with it or you're not, to be honest. That's at least my mentality I have. So I'd like this Twitter CEO to be appointed yesterday and for stuff to move on. But then again, I'm not Elon, and I don't have 5 or 6 different multi-billion-dollar companies. All right. Don't forget to watch the Starship launch as well. Much love, everyone. Take care. Have an awesome, awesome week. Prioritize your health. Go for a walk, go for a run, go to the gym. Prioritize your mental health. Meditate. Go pet some dogs, cats, whatever you need to do. Much love, everyone. Take care. Like before you leave. Hit the subscribe button before you leave. Yashu signing off. I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for all your guys' support as usual, and happy Sunday to everyone. Peace out.